In comparison to people 100 years ago, we all live exceptionally varied lives. I have traveled to a number of countries on a number of continents. I've also traveled extensively within my own beautiful country. I've been to all four corners of this, the loveliest of states, Oregon. I married a nice Canadian girl from Winnipeg. I've started a successful entrepreneurial venture. I got 50 chickens in the barn. And I feel like I have emotional capacity left over. I wonder what else will happen. I'm Nick Walton. I'm a coffee roaster, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a wee little farmer, and I can't stop thinking about the invisible scripts that run our lives. You're listening to The Values Sort. This is a field guide to the values that shape the patterns of thinking and behaviors that end up shaping our entire lives. This is essay number 16, A Varied Life. Let's get into it. I have lived what I would consider to be an extraordinarily varied life. I think we probably all have. Which I suppose would make it an ordinarily varied life. Who among us knew the trajectory of their lives at 5 years old, at 10, at 20? Heck, even at 30. And now here I am in my sporty-forties, and I am still newly uncertain of what I want to do with my life. Where will it lead? Where will I end up? How far will I go? I know now not to expect an answer. I am learning not to need one. A few years ago, I thought I knew where I was going. Just ahead of COVID, things seemed pretty settled. Our kids were in school. They were doing well. Our business had lost that new business terror. We moved to a house that actually fit our family. I had a view. There were migratory birds. Salamanders abounded. We could canoe off the back of our property. I purchased woodworking tools. We were settling into a rhythm. I remember feeling like a tree, firmly planted in a windy environment, but grown strong and healthy, able to withstand the rain and the wind and all manner of environmental abuse. I was, of course, wrong. Within the span of a year, our lives were utterly changed. On February 28th, 2020, my family traveled to Africa. It's a whole story. The plan was to visit coffee farmers we'd done business with in the past, and I was going to visit the film location of the Howard Hawks classic, Hatari, a slow-moving film that was nonetheless a huge part of my childhood. It was the world's introduction to Henry Mancini's Baby Elephant Walk. I was going to stay at the ranch in Arusha, or I wanted to anyway. Instead, COVID became a household word nearly overnight. Our flights were canceled. My family went on a day trip to an island inhabited by tortoises. And instead of traveling with them, I spent the day waiting on hold, being disconnected, and calling airlines back. Sweating bullets in the Hotel Tembo. What a profoundly stressful time that was for us. Personally, I lost a particular bit of my mind in that space. We did eventually find flights home that didn't go through fully locked down Europe. The airport in Dubai waited for us, not with luxury, but with weird full-body scanners and teams of people holding thermal guns. All the perfume shops were closed. Nobody was selling Haribo candies or Toblerone bars. There was nowhere to pay too much for a cell phone charger. We all sat stock still with a million other people sitting stock still trying to get wherever home was. Surely everything would feel all right if we all got home. We did eventually make it back to Oregon, but you may recall what we made it back to. I closed my coffee shop for a day, and then I reopened with a walk-up window, serving customers through a little porthole. We learned the difference between surgical masks and N95s. We purchased a big sheet of plexiglass to protect everybody. I consoled baristas, enduring people's stress and fear and rage. And then my social fabric started to tear. I grew up in the church. I was part of a consistent thread of relationships for more than 30 years. But when church got deeply complex and weird in 2020, we felt a need to create distance. This was a destabilizing experience, and I'm not over it. I watched helplessly as kindness and empathy were politicized. Everything became us versus them. Everything required a taking of sides and a drawing of swords. My neighbor, who had always been indifferent, became threatening and ugly. I had moved on to that property devoted to neighborliness, and eventually life handed me my ass in that area. Not everyone wants to be friends, and I didn't know that before. I arrogantly thought I could make friends with anyone, anytime, and I was wrong. George Floyd was murdered, and that was a horror. Parts of my community responded with an ugliness that has become uncomfortably common today, but I was not prepared for it at the time. Business got really hard. Customers dwindled. Retail was mostly dead. Regulars did their best. They paid in advance. They came as often as they could, but there were no tourists, no walk-by business, no new customers. Other people's businesses suffered. Wholesale dropped off. My income was threatened significantly. I was frightened. And then came the smoke. I hid inside my house in September 2020 as my beloved Willamette Valley was entirely smoked in. I witnessed the aftermath of vast swaths of my sweet Cascades being burned. Big trees. Trees that had survived fires before, but didn't survive them now. I contended with having grown up in a culture that mocked global climate change as a hoax, if you can even imagine that. It had been years since I'd questioned the validity of broad scientific consensus, but for whatever reason it was then, those September days locked in with smoke, newly knowledgeable about the local air quality index that drew my fearsome rage. And through it all, my children grew. Sunrise, sunset. I remember looking at photos from that airport trip in 2020. My eldest child looked little. She was interested in little kid things. She was engaged in a little kid's world. Just a year later, my children seemed to have swung, pendulum-like, into being big. My youngest deciding to like Taylor Swift. Sunrise, sunset. My partner and I got our yearly physicals in 2021, which led to a biopsy, which led to a cancer diagnosis. She is thankfully in remission today, having completed a rigorous course of treatment. My business continued to not work the way it used to. My marriage didn't look like it used to. My thought processes weren't recognizable to me. The point I'm trying to make, I suppose, is this. A varied life isn't something that we seek. It is something that happens to us. We can choose some of our circumstances, but we can't choose not to be confronted by a deadly disease, a layoff, an abusive situation, or a global pandemic. Even this project, these essays, it's a result of that variety. One day in 2024, a friend told me about a therapist who had been a pastor for 25 years and was now helping people through deconstruction, a hot-button term that, for me anyway, describes a process whereby applied beliefs are reevaluated. It has been deep, aching work for me. My relationship with the church had been complex for years. I was reducing my faith journey to its constituent parts, checking them for potency and future-proofing. I decided I wanted to talk to this guy. He didn't take my insurance, so we agreed on a short engagement, a beginning, a middle, and an end that I could afford. At one point, he identified that I'd missed a season of values setting in my youth, and he handed me this values deck. I sorted the cards for myself. I identified 5 values that were affecting my choices in that time of life. I snapped a picture and made it the background image of my phone. I spent 2 weeks meditating on that photo. When I returned for the next session, I relayed my excitement, and he gave me the deck for my very own. I took it home, I did it with my family, then I did it with my closest friends, then others, then others, then others. And now I've done it many times with many people. Some I've known since birth, like my little old grandmother or my first babysitter. Some are so young they don't even know what the exercise is about, but they trust me and they want to be involved, and that's deeply meaningful to me. I love guiding a 10-year-old through the process, reading the cards aloud and creatively explaining an idea like reciprocation of favors to a child. It's the most important thing I do with my hands. Not more important than family, you understand, or world peace. But in terms of the sticks and bricks of my life, the day-to-day working it out, this is the thing I love to do with people. And I couldn't have planned this when I was sitting on hold in Zanzibar or hiding from the smoke in Oregon. We don't know. Our lives are varied. We can't count on them to be static or ordinary. We can try to buy or plan our way into a life of knowing what's next, but that will produce a life of mediocrity, and it probably won't work anyway. Life will be variable. The only question is what tools and what beautiful new plant life we find in the rubble.